Jax Carter was never one to believe in legends. A mechanic by trade, his world was built on machines, wires, engines, gears, things that could be touched, fixed, and understood. Myths and stories about ancient civilizations meant nothing to him. But when his ship crash-landed on the remote planet of Orion IV, Jax found himself in the middle of something he couldn't explain. His assignment was simple: find parts to help with the colony's power issues. The colony was barely surviving, relying on makeshift technology to stay alive. The planet's resources were scarce and time was running out. But as Jax wandered through the dense forests of Orion IV, he noticed something strange. There, hidden beneath layers of moss and vines, was an object that looked far older than anything humanity had ever built. It was a massive structure, its surface covered in alien engravings. The shape was unlike anything he had ever seen before. At first glance, Jax thought it might be some sort of statue, but the longer he stared at it, the more it seemed like it was alive. The way the patterns on its surface shifted slightly when the wind passed, the strange glow that occasionally pulsed through the cracks. It was as though this relic wasn't just an artifact. It was something far more mysterious. Jax had always been curious about the unknown, especially when it came to machines. He wasn't the type to shy away from a challenge, and the sight of this ancient relic intrigued him. It seemed out of place in the middle of this wild, forgotten forest. He had no idea how it got there, but there was one thing he did know. It was not a natural part of the landscape. A smile tugged at the corner of his lips as he took a step closer. His years of experience as a mechanic told him this wasn't just a piece of alien artwork. This was a machine hidden away, long forgotten, and Jax couldn't resist the idea of taking it apart, of finding out what made it tick. He set down his pack and approached the relic carefully, brushing away the vines and moss that had claimed it over centuries. He ran his hand over its surface, feeling the cool metallic texture beneath the dirt and plant growth. The relic was warm, as if it had been powered recently. Something was keeping it alive, even in its abandoned state. "Let's see what you're all about," Jax muttered to himself. He began to examine the machine, looking for any visible cracks, joints, or wires that might indicate a way inside. He had worked on machines far more complex than this, but this was something else entirely. It was beautiful, like a piece of art sculpted from another age. The markings on its surface seemed to tell a story. Though Jax couldn't make sense of them, some of the symbols seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them, almost as if they were alive too. Hours passed as he continued to inspect the relic, trying to figure out how to unlock it. At one point, he thought he saw a faint glow coming from a small panel near the base of the structure. It wasn't much, but it was enough to spark his curiosity. He had found something that responded to his touch. Jax knelt down, brushing more dirt away until he exposed a hidden panel. The engraving on it was unlike anything he had seen before, smooth, flowing lines that curled around the edges. He ran his fingers across the symbols, his mind racing. This wasn't just a broken machine. This was something ancient, something far beyond anything humanity had created. A soft click echoed through the forest as the panel shifted. The relic groaned as though waking from a long slumber. The air around Jax grew thicker, heavier, and he instinctively took a step back. He didn't know what to expect, but what happened next was nothing like he had ever imagined. A burst of light shot out from the panel, lighting up the forest for a split second before fading. The relic hummed softly, its surface shimmering with a faint glow. Jax blinked, his heart racing. He had activated something. Something powerful, but what? He took another step forward, his instincts telling him to be cautious. As he touched the panel again, more lights flickered to life and strange symbols appeared in mid-air, floating in the space in front of him. The symbols shifted and changed, rearranging themselves in a pattern Jax didn't understand. But the humming sound grew louder, and Jax could feel a strange pull, as if the relic was calling out to him. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled slightly, and he stumbled backward, his hand reaching out for something to steady himself. The relic seemed to respond to his movement, shifting its form slightly as though it was alive. It wasn't just a machine anymore. It was something else entirely. Jax's breath caught in his throat. What was he dealing with? Could this relic be some sort of weapon, an artifact from an ancient civilization? His mind raced as he tried to make sense of it all. The forest around him seemed to grow quieter, as if holding its breath. The relic's humming grew steadier, more rhythmic, almost as though it were communicating with him. Jax didn't know if he was imagining things, but it felt like the relic was alive, reaching out to him in ways he couldn't explain. The air felt charged now, crackling with energy. Jax's fingers hovered above the panel, and he wondered for a brief moment if he should stop. Should he leave? Should he run? But something told him to keep going. There was a power here, a force beyond anything he had ever encountered, and it was calling to him. Without thinking, Jax pressed the panel one last time. This time the symbols in the air began to glow brighter, and the relic's hum grew louder. The ground trembled again, more forcefully now, as if the relic was coming to life. Then, as suddenly as it had all begun, everything stopped. The lights flickered once more, and the symbols in the air disappeared. The relic fell silent, its glow fading. It was as if nothing had happened. Jax stood there for a long moment, unsure of what to do next. Had he imagined the whole thing? But the feeling in the air lingered. There was something more to this relic, something deeper than he could understand, and now he had awakened it. Jax couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. He didn't know what he had just unleashed, but he couldn't leave now. The relic had responded to him, and he had to know why. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He had become a part of something far bigger than himself. As he stood there, contemplating his next move, the air around him seemed to grow even thicker. A voice not heard but felt seemed to resonate deep within his chest. It was faint, barely audible, but unmistakable. Awaken, child of the stars, Jax froze, his blood running cold. Who or what had spoken? The voice faded, but the echo lingered in his mind. The relic wasn't just an ancient machine. It was a message. And somehow, Jax had been chosen to receive it. The morning sun filtered through the tall trees of Orion IV's dense forest, casting long shadows across the forest floor. The silence of the woods felt unnatural now, like the world was holding its breath. Jax stood before the relic, his mind racing as the events of the previous night played over and over in his head. He still couldn't believe what had happened. The relic, the machine he had stumbled upon in the forest, had come to life. But not in the way he expected. It wasn't just a dormant piece of ancient technology. It was something more, something alive, and now after pressing the panel, something inside it had been awakened. But what? Jax's hand still hovered over the panel. His fingers tingled with the memory of the power he had felt when the relic responded. For a moment he hesitated. What should he do now? He wasn't trained for this kind of situation. He was a mechanic, not an archaeologist or a historian. He didn't know anything about alien technology, let alone a relic that seemed to have its own mind. But the relic's hum, faint yet persistent, beckoned him. It had been silent for only a few moments, but now it seemed to be calling out, waiting for him to unlock its next secret. Jax felt a strange compulsion to press the panel again. Perhaps, just perhaps, it would answer some of the questions that were swirling in his mind. With a deep breath, Jax pressed the panel once more. The moment his fingers touched it, the air around him seemed to shift. The relic trembled slightly, and a low, melodic hum filled the air, vibrating through Jax's chest. A light, soft but steady, flickered to life in the middle of the relic's structure. The surface of the relic seemed to shimmer, and then, without warning, a vast hologram burst into the air above him. Jax took a step back, his eyes wide in shock. He had seen holograms before, of course. His work as a mechanic had often involved working with digital displays and data projections. But this was different. This hologram wasn't just an image. It was a window into something far greater. The map that appeared in front of him was huge, stretching across the sky like a canvas of stars. Jax squinted, trying to make sense of the strange shapes and symbols floating in the air. The map showed a galaxy, one Jax had never seen before, filled with star systems he didn't recognize. As the hologram expanded, it revealed even more. Distant planets, some with strange colors and landscapes, others with massive cities and bustling civilizations. But there was one thing that stood out above all else. At the center of the map, a large glowing symbol pulsed steadily. As Jax stared at the map, trying to understand what he was seeing, the hologram shifted, and a voice suddenly filled his ears. The voice was deep and resonant, like the hum of an ancient machine. It spoke in a language Jax didn't understand, but somehow he understood it completely. It was as though the relic was speaking directly to his mind. "Welcome, child of the stars, you have awakened me. I am Lyra, the heart of the Etherian Empire." Jax froze, his heart pounding in his chest. Lyra, Etherian Empire? The words felt heavy, like they carried the weight of centuries. He had heard legends of ancient empires and forgotten civilizations, but nothing like this. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of the voice, the map, and the strange symbols surrounding him. Was this some kind of dream? Was he imagining things? But then the hologram shifted again, showing an image of a majestic starship, one that dwarfed anything Jax had ever seen. The ship was massive, with sleek, elegant lines that spoke of advanced technology, beyond anything humanity could dream of. The ship's surface shimmered like liquid metal, and at its heart was a glowing, pulsing core, much like the one in the center of the map. "I was once the vessel of the Etherean Empire," the voice continued. "I was its heart, its strength, and its soul. For millennia, I guided the Empire across the stars, bringing peace, prosperity, and order to the galaxy. But those days are gone. I have been forgotten, abandoned, hidden in this forsaken forest. But you, Jax Carter, have awakened me." Jax's mind spun. The Etherean Empire? He had never heard of such a thing. Yet the name felt oddly familiar, as if it were buried deep in the back of his mind, waiting to be remembered. The voice, Lyra, was speaking directly to him, revealing secrets of the past that Jax could barely comprehend. "The Etherean Empire once ruled over hundreds of worlds," Lyra continued, her voice carrying a weight of sadness. "We were the most advanced civilization to ever exist. But we were betrayed and the Empire fell. Now I am all that remains of that glorious time. And you, Jax, are the key to restoring it." The voice faded for a moment and the hologram flickered, showing a massive, catastrophic battle, a war that had torn apart the Etherean Empire. Jax watched in awe as the images played out before him. Starships clashing in the void, planets burning, and the heart of the Empire shattering. The Etherians had been powerful, yes, but their arrogance had led to their downfall. And now the relic, Lyra, was all that was left. Jax's mind raced. Could it be true? Was this relic really the key to an ancient, forgotten empire? Could this machine, the one he had just repaired, hold the power to change everything? "I am old, Jax. I am not what I once was," Lyra's voice continued, now softer, more sorrowful. "But I still remember. I still have the knowledge, the strength to rebuild the Empire. You have the skills to unlock my full potential. You can bring the Etherean legacy back to life." Jax took a step back, his hands shaking. His mind was struggling to keep up with everything he was learning. He had always been a practical person, a mechanic who understood machines and how they worked. But this was something beyond his understanding, beyond anything he had ever encountered. He looked around, half expecting to see someone, anyone, to explain what was happening. But the forest was as quiet as ever. It was just him, standing before this ancient relic, listening to a voice from the past and feeling the weight of a power that he couldn't fully grasp. "The Etherean Empire is waiting. Jax, will you help me rebuild it?" Lyra's voice asked, soft yet insistent. "Will you take control of the legacy of the stars?" Jax stood still, his heart pounding in his chest. He was just a mechanic. What could he possibly know about ruling a galaxy? But the offer was tempting. The power, the knowledge, the opportunity to change the galaxy. It was all in front of him, just waiting to be unlocked. He reached out slowly, his hand trembling as he touched the surface of the relic once more. He could feel the energy coursing through it, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. For the first time, Jax understood that he was no longer just repairing a machine. He was becoming part of something much larger, something that could change the fate of the galaxy itself. The voice of Lyra echoed in his mind one last time. "It is your choice, Jax Carter. The stars are waiting." Jax stood frozen before the relic, his fingers still lightly resting on its metallic surface. The forest around him was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft hum emanating from the ancient machine. Lyra, the sentient warship, had spoken to him, asking him to become the key to the resurrection of an empire that had once ruled the stars. But Jax didn't know what to make of it all. He was a mechanic, not a ruler. He had always worked with engines and machines, not galaxies and empires. His mind raced as the weight of the decision pressed down on him. Should he help Lyra rebuild the Etherean Empire? What if it was too dangerous? What if it wasn't just about restoring an ancient civilization? It could mean war and chaos and the kind of power he wasn't sure humanity was ready for. But Lyra's words echoed in his mind. The stars are waiting. The idea of power, the power to change the galaxy, to restore a forgotten empire, was tempting. He had always worked hard to fix things, to make machines run again. But this wasn't just any machine. It was a living, breathing piece of history, and it needed him. Jax knew he couldn't walk away now. The Relic had chosen him, and though he didn't fully understand why, he felt a pull, a responsibility he couldn't ignore. He took a deep breath, stepped back, and looked at the holographic map floating in front of him. It was still there, glowing faintly in the air, showing the far reaches of the galaxy. At its center was a planet, surrounded by dozens of star systems. The symbol that pulsed at the center wasn't just a sign of the Etherian Empire. It was a beacon, calling out for someone to restore it to its former glory. Jax turned back to the Relic. "I'll help you," he whispered, more to himself than to Lyra. "But I need to understand what I'm getting into." As if in response to his words, the Relic hummed louder, and the voice of Lyra filled his mind once more, this time with a tone of approval. "You are wise, Jax Carter. I will show you the truth." The hologram flickered, and images of distant planets appeared in front of him. The cities, once grand and majestic, now lay in ruins. In one image, he saw a massive space station, surrounded by broken ships and twisted metal. In another, entire continents were burning, reduced to ash by a devastating war. The once mighty Etherian Empire had fallen, not by natural disaster, but through betrayal, greed, and conflict. The Etherians were powerful, Lyra's voice said, but their strength was also their weakness. We sought to bring peace, but in doing so, we became blind to the ambitions of others. The Zarka, our greatest enemies, betrayed us, and the Empire crumbled under their assault. But now you have the chance to rebuild what was lost. Jax's heart sank as he watched the destruction unfold before him. The Etherian Empire had been destroyed not by outside forces, but by its own people. The war, the betrayal, it was all too familiar. History had a way of repeating itself, and Jax feared that if he helped restore the Empire, humanity could fall into the same traps. The allure of power was dangerous, and Jax wasn't sure he was ready to lead. "But I am not asking you to become a ruler, Jax." Lyra's voice cut through his thoughts. "I am asking you to help rebuild. You are not alone. You have humanity with you." Jax clenched his fists. He wasn't sure what that meant, but he couldn't deny the feeling that he was on the verge of something monumental. The Relic had chosen him, yes, but there was more at stake here. The fate of the galaxy rested in his hands, and for better or worse, he had already made his choice. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet shook, and the hum of the Relic grew louder, more urgent. Jax's eyes snapped to the hologram, where the glowing symbol at the center of the map began to pulse faster. It was like a warning. Lyra's voice came again, this time with a tone of alarm. "The Zarka have found us, Jax." Jax's heart skipped a beat. He knew the Zarka, the ruthless alien race that had helped bring down the Etherian Empire. They were known for their advanced weaponry, their hunger for power, and their ability to strike without warning. Jax had heard rumors of their existence, but never imagined he would be facing them so soon. The hologram shifted again, showing the Zarka fleet, massive, dark ships that seemed to blot out the stars. They were moving quickly, their weapons primed and ready for battle. Lyra continued, her voice growing more insistent. "They are coming for me, Jax. They cannot allow the Etherian Empire to rise again. You must act now." Jax's mind spun. He wasn't prepared for a battle not like this. But he knew that the Zarka wouldn't stop until they had destroyed Lyra. And if they destroyed her, they would destroy any chance of rebuilding the Etherian Empire. The galaxy's fate was in his hands, and there was no time to waste. With a sense of urgency, Jax turned and ran toward the small shuttle he had arrived in. He hadn't planned on using it for anything more than transportation, but now it was his only hope. He needed to get to the Relic's control center to unlock more of its power. As he approached the shuttle, the Relic's voice echoed in his mind once again, this time with a more commanding tone. "Do not fear, Jax. I will guide you. Together we will defeat the Zarka." Jax took a deep breath and climbed into the shuttle. The controls felt strange beneath his hands, but the Relic seemed to know exactly what he needed. As he activated the shuttle's engines, the ship hummed to life, and a new set of controls appeared on the screen. This time, linked directly to Lyra. The warship's power surged, and Jax felt a sudden surge of confidence. "I'm ready," Jax said, though he wasn't entirely sure if that was true. With a flash, the shuttle shot off the ground, rocketing toward the skies. The forest below quickly became a blur as Jax steered the shuttle toward the horizon. In the distance, the Zarka fleet loomed larger, their ships gliding through space like dark shadows. Lyra's voice guided him, her instructions clear and precise. "Activate the weapon systems, Jax. Fire when ready." Jax's fingers hesitated over the controls. He wasn't a fighter. He didn't know how to lead a battle. But the Relic's power was undeniable. It was ancient, yes, but it was also sophisticated. Too sophisticated for the Zarka to understand. The weapons Lyra had at her disposal were beyond anything Jax had ever seen. His hands gripped the controls tightly. He wasn't sure if he was ready for this, but he knew he had no choice. He had already made a promise to help rebuild the Etherian Empire. Now that promise was being tested. With a deep breath, Jax activated the ship's weapons. The shuttle's cannons hummed, charging with energy. Then with a flash, a beam of brilliant light shot out, striking the first Zarka ship. The explosion was massive, sending shockwaves through space. But the Zarka weren't done. They retaliated, their weapons lashing out in return. Jax didn't hesitate. He fired again, this time hitting another Zarka ship. The battle was just beginning, and though Jax wasn't sure how this would end, one thing was clear. The galaxy was about to change. The sky above Orion 4 had turned a deep shade of purple as Jax's shuttle rocketed through space. The shuttle's weapons hummed with power as he piloted it toward the advancing Zarka fleet. Behind him, Lyra, the ancient relic he had awakened, was guiding him through every maneuver, every decision. The once quiet forest of Orion 4 felt like a distant memory now, replaced by the chaos of battle that raged just outside his cockpit. Jax's heart pounded in his chest as he looked ahead, watching the dark silhouettes of the Zarka ships grow larger. They were massive, far bigger than any human-made spacecraft, and their weapons glowed with deadly energy. He had seen their destructive power on the hologram, and now here they were, real and threatening. "They are coming for you, Jax. You must defend me." Lyra's voice echoed in his mind, calm and steady, but beneath her calmness there was a deep urgency. Jax gripped the controls tighter. He had never been in a space battle before. His skills as a mechanic had never prepared him for this moment. Yet with Lyra's guidance he felt a strange confidence, a sense of purpose that had been missing from his life until now. This was bigger than any mechanical problem he had ever faced. This was about survival, not just his but the survival of the galaxy. "I will guide you, Jax, trust me," Lyra urged. Without hesitation, Jax activated the shuttle's weapon systems again. A blinding beam of light shot out from the shuttle's cannons, striking one of the Zarka ships. The ship exploded in a burst of flames, but the remaining ships didn't slow down. They came on with even more force, determined to wipe out the ancient relic and anyone who stood in their way. Jax's hands moved instinctively as he steered the shuttle through the stars, dodging blasts from the Zarka ships. The shuttle seemed to respond to him as if it were an extension of his own body. With Lyra's help, Jax was able to maneuver with incredible precision, avoiding incoming fire and returning it with deadly accuracy. "You are doing well, Jax." Lyra's voice praised him, though there was no time for rest. "But they are relentless. They will not stop." Jax's eyes scanned the battlefield. The Zarka ships were unlike anything he had seen before. They were dark, jagged, and ominous, with sharp edges that seemed to cut through the void of space. The enemy fleet had been waiting for this moment, knowing that the relic, Lyra, had been awakened. They had come to stop it from regaining its full power. Suddenly, a warning light flashed on the shuttle's dashboard. Jax's heart skipped a beat. A new wave of Zarka ships was approaching, even larger than the first. They had launched reinforcements. "Brace yourself, Jax, this will be difficult," Lyra's voice warned. Jax felt a surge of adrenaline as the new enemy ships closed in. There were too many of them. No matter how hard he fought, he couldn't take them all down. His shuttle's shields were weakening with each blast, and the energy reserves were draining fast. If he didn't act quickly, they would be overwhelmed. "Jax, I am going to transfer additional power to your weapons," Lyra announced. "Prepare yourself. You will need all the strength I can provide." Before Jax could respond, he felt a rush of energy coursing through the shuttle's systems. The weapon surged with power, and the shields around the shuttle strengthened. Jax grinned. He had never felt anything like this. It was as if the ship itself had become a part of him, working in perfect harmony with his every thought and movement. With renewed strength, Jax fired again, this time hitting multiple Zarka ships in quick succession. Explosions filled the space around him, and for a moment he felt like he was in complete control. But the Zarka weren't done yet. They regrouped, their ships circling in a tight formation, preparing for a coordinated assault. Jax's mind raced. He needed a plan, something to give him the upper hand. The battle had been going on for what felt like hours, but it was far from over. The Zarka were relentless. They wouldn't stop until they destroyed him and the Relic. And he couldn't let that happen. "Lyra, what's the next move?" Jax asked, his voice tight with tension. "We will use my full power to disable their fleet," Lyra replied calmly. "But I need you to activate the core." The core. Jax had heard of it, but he had no idea what it was or how to activate it. He glanced at the holographic interface in front of him. There in the corner of the display was a small blinking icon labeled Core Activation. "It's the heart of my power, Jax. It will give us the ability to stop them," Lyra explained. "But activating it is dangerous. It will require all of your focus and willpower." Jax hesitated. Could he really do it? Could he unlock the full potential of the Relic and use it against the Zarka? He didn't have much of a choice. The fleet was closing in fast. He had to act. With a deep breath, Jax pressed the icon. The moment his fingers touched the control, a deep, resonant hum filled the shuttle, and the entire ship seemed to vibrate. The core had activated. Energy surged through the shuttle like a wave of pure power. Jax's hands shook as the control panels lit up with new, unfamiliar information. But there was no time to analyze it. He had to act now. Jax aimed the shuttle's weapons at the Zarka ships. A massive beam of energy shot from the shuttle's core, engulfing an entire wave of enemy ships. The blast was blinding, and for a moment Jax couldn't see anything. But when the light faded, the Zarka ships were gone. They had been obliterated in an instant. The battlefield was eerily silent. Jax's heart raced as he surveyed the area. The remaining Zarka ships were retreating, their once menacing formation scattering into the stars. It had worked. The core's power had been enough to turn the tide of the battle. But as Jax breathed a sigh of relief, Lyra's voice came through, this time with a tone of concern. "We are not done yet. Jax, the Zarka will return. They are only regrouping." Jax's shoulders slumped. He knew she was right. This battle was just one small victory in a much larger war. The Zarka would come back stronger, more determined to destroy the Relic, and Jax couldn't let that happen. He had to keep fighting. "We have no choice," Jax muttered to himself. "We keep going. For the galaxy." The aftermath of the battle left Jax's shuttle floating quietly among the stars. The once menacing Zarka fleet had been obliterated, reduced to scattered debris, but Jax knew this was only a temporary victory. Lyra's voice echoed in his mind, steady and calm as ever. "The Zarka will not give up, Jax. They will return. They will not allow the Etherian Empire to rise again." Jax nodded, his hand still gripping the shuttle's controls. He had used Lyra's power to win the battle, but it felt like a hollow victory. The enemy fleet was gone for now, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the war was far from over. His decision to help rebuild the Etherian Empire had set him on a path he couldn't turn back from. And now, he had to face the consequences. He had seen the remnants of the Etherian Empire in the holograms, the once glorious ships and cities now reduced to ashes. He had seen the cost of war, the destruction, the betrayal, the fall of an entire civilization. Was he really prepared to rebuild something that had once fallen apart because of greed and power? Could humanity avoid the same fate? "What do we do now?" Jax asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Lyra's response was unwavering, though she could sense his doubt. "We rebuild, Jax. We gather what is left and we create a new empire, one that will bring peace and prosperity to the galaxy." The weight of her words settled in Jax's chest. A new empire. But was that the right path? Was it the right thing for humanity? Jax had always believed in helping people, in fixing what was broken. But this was different. This wasn't just about machines and technology. It was about power, control, and the future of millions of lives. His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden warning signal. The shuttle's dashboard flickered, and a new set of coordinates appeared on the screen. Jax glanced at the map, confused. The coordinates led to a distant planet deep in Zarka territory. "What is this?" Jax asked, his brow furrowing as he stared at the display. "It is a safe haven, Jax," Lyra replied. "The Etherians once had hidden sanctuaries throughout the galaxy, places where they could retreat and regroup when the Empire was threatened. This location holds a key to the future." Jax didn't hesitate. If there was a chance to strengthen their position, to gain more knowledge and resources, he had to take it. The Zarka might return at any moment, and they couldn't afford to be unprepared. He set the course and engaged the shuttle's engines. The journey was long, taking Jax far from Orion 4 through the empty reaches of space. The stars outside his cockpit window stretched into long lines as he pushed the shuttle into faster-than-light travel. During the voyage, Jax couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened so far. The relic, Lyra, had given him the power to fight, to protect humanity and the remnants of the Etherean legacy. But he still didn't know if he was ready to lead. "You are not alone, Jax," Lyra reassured him. "Together we will shape the galaxy. The past is gone, but the future is yours to create." The words felt comforting, but there was an undertone of weight to them. The future was his to shape, but how would he do it? Would he fall into the same traps that had caused the Etherians' downfall? Could humanity truly escape the cycle of power, corruption, and war? The shuttle finally reached its destination, a small, uncharted planet on the edge of Zarka space. Jax landed on a barren, rocky surface surrounded by the empty silence of deep space. As he stepped out of the shuttle, he felt a strange sense of anticipation. This was where the key to rebuilding the Empire lay, but it wasn't clear exactly what that meant. Lyra guided him as he navigated the planet's surface. There was no sign of life, just the harsh, windswept landscape. Yet Jax couldn't shake the feeling that something was here. Something important. The relic's voice filled his mind once more. "The sanctuary is underground, Jax. It is hidden from the Zarka, a place of safety and knowledge." Jax followed the coordinates, and soon he found what he was looking for, a massive, hidden entrance partially buried in the rocky surface. He approached cautiously, his heart racing as he activated the entrance. The door slowly slid open, revealing a dark, cold tunnel beneath the surface. Inside, ancient Etherean technology hummed softly, still functional after all these years. Jax's eyes widened as he stepped inside. The room was filled with rows of databanks and control consoles, each displaying holographic images of the galaxy, of star systems, and advanced technology. It was like stepping into the heart of the Etherean Empire. This was where the knowledge of the past had been stored, preserved for those who would one day come to rebuild. "This is it," Jax whispered to himself, "the key to the future." He began to sift through the data, studying the blueprints for advanced technology, star maps that could help humanity expand its reach, and strategies for governing a galactic empire. But there was something more, something that caught his eye. One section of the database was marked with a warning: "The Fall of the Etherians." As Jax opened it, he saw the final, devastating chapter of the Etherean Empire's history. The data showed how the Etherians, in their arrogance, had begun to see themselves as gods, believing they had the right to rule over all other species. They had turned their advanced technology into weapons, forcing planets into submission. And when other civilizations rebelled, the Etherians had responded with destruction, leading to their downfall. The lesson was clear. Power, unchecked and uncontrolled, led to ruin. The Etherians had failed because they believed they were above everyone else. They had forgotten what it meant to be humble, to work together for the greater good. Jax closed the file, his mind heavy with the weight of the information. He now understood the full scope of what he was about to undertake. Rebuilding the Etherean Empire wasn't just about restoring technology or gaining power. It was about restoring the values of peace and balance. It was about learning from the past and making sure humanity didn't repeat the same mistakes. "Lyra," Jax said, his voice firm with resolve, "we have to do this differently. Humanity must be a force for good in the galaxy. We can rebuild, but we must build it on the foundation of peace, cooperation, and respect." The relic's voice responded, softer now, almost approving. "You understand, Jax. This is why you were chosen." Jax stood in the control room, looking out over the galaxy displayed before him. He realized that the future wasn't about conquering or dominating. It was about unity. The galaxy could be a place of peace, where civilizations could come together and work as one, using the knowledge and technology they had to create a better future for everyone. It would not be easy. The Zarka would return and other challenges would arise. But Jax was no longer just a mechanic. He was a leader, a protector, and a guide. He had the power to change the galaxy, and with Lyra by his side, he would make sure that humanity's future was built on the lessons of the past. Jax activated the control consoles, sending a message to the surviving Etherean colonies. To those who still believed in the ideals of the old empire, it was time to unite, to rise again, not as conquerors, but as stewards of peace. The stars beckoned, and for the first time, Jax felt ready to answer.